Just ring the bell and kick ass.
The following podcast is scheduled for one topic with a 20-minute time limit.
All right, Steve, so on this episode, we're going to talk about tribalism in wrestling. So I'm hoping that we just piss off everyone on
Welcome to the official Warrior Wrestling Podcast with your hosts, Warrior Wrestling President Steve Tortorello and Warrior Digital Wizard Henry Jasper.
What is this thing that we call tribalism? Yeah. And then, is it helpful? The answer is no, but is it helpful? And then, what are the differences that cause the tribes?
Yeah, I think so. Triple H has used this great analogy. You know I love analogies, and Triple H has used the analogy of ice cream in the past when talking about wrestling, right? Like there's different flavors of ice cream. The dude probably went 10 years without.
I don't know why ice cream caught me, but it did, dude. I was just like, ice cream's hilarious.
Dude probably went, 20 years of his life without eating ice cream, so it's maybe on his mind. But I think it's a great analogy because there's all these different flavors, right? And if you and I go to an ice cream parlor together and I'm like, I'm going to get mint chocolate chip, and you're like, I'm going to get cookie dough. I'm not like, man, cookie dough sucks. You're so dumb for liking cookie dough, right? Like, no, like that's absurd. I'm not going to be like, well, mint chocolate chip actually sells 1.5 gallons more per capita per parlor than cookie dough. So that means that you stink. Like, no, right? Like,
see, but little did you know, I am also a fan of mint chocolate chip, but I'm going to intentionally pick a different brand than you so we could just argue over the same flavor that looks different.
That's always been Triple H's point when he talked about NXT and main roster, and now it's WWE and AEW. Like, they do different things. And I don't know, like, if you're eating cookie dough and I'm eating mint chocolate chip, my mint chocolate chip doesn't taste any better if I convince you that you should hate your cookie dough, right? Like, that's just dumb. You just enjoy your cookie dough. I'll enjoy my mint chocolate chip. Like, why do people feel the need to convince other people that the thing they like is not good? Why doesn't everyone just enjoy the flavor they like? And it's just so mind-numbing.
Where does it cross the line? Because we're all fans of this thing that we call pro wrestling. It's okay, I think, to nerd out on certain things and to we do it on this podcast, bro. Like, we're like, oh, what's your favorite whatever? There's a line where is that the line? Is that when I then turn on you for you having your opinion that is different than mine? Like, is there some weird toxic thing that happens? Is that when it becomes tribal?
Yeah, I think it becomes tribal when there's nothing wrong with loving the flavor of ice cream you love. It's when you yell at other people for liking their flavor of ice cream that it becomes really weird and tribal. And like, they're trying to do different things, right? So like mint chocolate chip is a smooth, refreshing flavor. Cookie dough is chunky and buttery and you want to bite through it and chew it. They're different. They're not trying to be the same thing. And I think AEW and WWE are so different, right? So I once heard a great analogy for WWE by a former WWE talent, and I won't share the talent's name. And the talent said, WWE has always, or for 25 years, been trying to be The Simpsons, in the sense of you have a world that you've created, Springfield or the WWE universe, and there are 5 main characters. It's The Simpsons. And there are all of these peripheral characters who might interact with The Simpsons on a given day. But the show is about The Simpsons. And no matter how well Groundskeeper Willie gets over, Groundskeeper Willie is never going to be one of the top 5 characters. It's The Simpsons themselves are the top 5 characters. And so it's a TV show with characters. And so every episode is the characters talking, the characters having personal crises, the characters doing whatever. And they just so happen to be in and around a wrestling ring. And the quicker fans realize that, That's what WWE does. It's a character show about specific starring characters and their stories with one another. Then you can cheer for that and love that, or not like that if you don't like it, right? And that's the thing too that I've learned. And over the years, there was a period 10 years ago where so many fans were angry at WWE. I was one of them, right? Because they were so mad at WWE not being the wrestling that they wanted to watch. But it was really our only option. I mean, Impact TNA kind of came and went and how visible it was or what it could do. But people were so angry at WWE because it's not the wrestling I want. And then like we got to see New Japan, right? Technology changed. We could stream New Japan. We could watch New Japan. And then Impact, the waxed and waned with what it was providing. And Lucha Libre stuff online and indie wrestling got super hot. And then eventually,
I was going to say Lucha Underground in particular. Lucha I feel Underground. Like that was like an oasis in the desert for all of us.
Yeah. And then eventually AEW came and put all of those pieces together and basically became indie wrestling, international wrestling on television, presented in a more sports-like way. And people are like, what do you mean sports-like? Some of the stuff's goofy. But I get there in a second. But indie international wrestling presented in a more sports-like way, available on television versus WWE's TV show. And it's interesting because as a fan, I actually enjoy WWE more from like 2018 to the present than I did from like 2008 to 2018, because I can have the things I'm looking for in other wrestling in other places and then just enjoy WWE for what it is, right? It's its own flavor. So for example, real quick, Royal Rumble this year, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns was the main event, and then the post-match angle with Sami Zayn and all that stuff. I had told my wife, like, hey, I want to watch this pay-per-view, or I want to watch this main event. And then the match was on and I was doing something else. And my wife was like, I thought you wanted to watch this WWE thing. I was like, oh, yeah. I'm just going to watch the angle after the match. The match doesn't matter. And that's true in WWE, right? Like the match actually doesn't matter. Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens had a match that I don't remember one single interchange from, right? Like don't remember, I couldn't tell you if you offer me $10,000, a single move or sequence in that match. But after the match, we get the big dramatic, are you with us? Are you not with us? Are we brothers? Whatever. And that's WWE's thing. And you watch WWE for those things. They even tell you, right? Like it's about moments. WWE is about moments, not matches. So for me, WWE's entrances and moments, that's their flavor. And I can like that flavor now because I get amazing New Japan style matches from New Japan. And I get amazing Lucha Libre from the Indies and AAA and sometimes AEW. And I get top rate, state of the art pro wrestling ring work from AEW 3 times a week. And so they're different flavors, right? WWE is this flavor. AEW is this flavor. Eat the flavor you like or eat them both at different times, right? Sometimes you want mint chocolate chip. Sometimes you want cookie dough. Eat the flavor when you want the flavor.
And here's a nuance to this conversation. As a booker, do you think AEW has differentiated themselves enough? Or do you think that they try to play the WWE game a little bit too much?
I think it's a fine balance of both, right? So like there are people online right now in the last couple of weeks who are really upset with MJF being too WWE-like. And I'm like, but that's who he is, right? Like that's who, or like the MJF Adam Cole story, like the vignettes are too WWE-like. And I was like, they're incredibly entertaining. What are you talking about?
I don't think WWE would have, I don't know. It wouldn't have looked that they wouldn't have shot it.
No, they wouldn't have shot it that way. The humor wouldn't have been the same, etc.
Yeah.
But
I get what they mean, though. Okay.
There are people who just want AEW to be ring the bell, no context, do cool stuff. And there's absolutely a place for ring the bell, no context, do cool stuff. And some of that's a big part of what Dynamite is, right? Like I can go into a coma and I can wake up in 3 months on a Wednesday and be like, I want to watch some cool action. Let me watch 2 hours of Dynamite and be thrilled. Because I don't need to know any of the context, any of the whatever. Nick Jackson's fighting Phoenix. It's for their 94th belt that they have, right? And it's for the upside down pineapple cake belt. Cool. But the point is, like, there's a flavor there, right? Like, I could wake up after a 3-month coma, watch Dynamite, and it's probably the same flavor as before I went into the coma, which is good because I know I'm always going to get a high octane opener, a bunch of different stuff. I'm going to get 6 or 7 matches in my 2 hours. And that's what I want. Like, it is absolutely fun. It's like watching, for me, it's college basketball or playoff hockey, right? Like, I know the style of what I'm going to see, and it's going to be interesting and entertaining, and I can pick it up, no context, and just watch it. I think, though, there's also a ceiling for that too, right? Like, a WWE fan will be like, they don't have any stories. They do have, AEW does have stories. They tell them in a subtle, different way that isn't the same as, WWE hits you over. Like, WWE is like, if you and I are having a segment and I'm like, Henry, you smell like underpants. Like, as I'm walking away from the ring, they're going to show a replay. Like, here's where Steve said Henry smelled like underpants. And then they're going to come back from commercial. They're going to be like, a few minutes ago, I can't believe Steve said Henry smelled like underpants. And then they're going to play 3 replays during the broadcast of me saying you smell like underpants. And then in the main event, like, I'm going to come out and hold up underpants, right? Like, they treat you like you only have a 6-second attention span because Vince McMahon probably only has a 6-second attention span. So WWE is going to reinforce it every time you take a breath. These are the key story points we're pushing this week. AEW is like, hey, in a backstage thing, a person looked weird at another person, and we're not going to talk about this for 6 months, and then they're going to turn on each other and murder each other, right? Like, they're the opposite ends of the spectrum here.
And you're right. It's not that they're not telling stories. It is a different type of storytelling. Why WWE has leaned into the simpler, or the whatever way you want to say it, storytelling, because it's 3 weeks of a build, a go home, and a pay-per-view. And it's been that way forever. And now with AEW, for a while, they were only doing quarterlies. So you were getting a dripped storyline, and then I'm not always sure they had a plan. I think they kind of knew where they were going, but I think week by week, they kind of just came up with the best they had. And then they just did a really good job of packaging it and re-delivering it for the pay-per-view, which I actually think made those more potent for me, because that's another difference in the flavors is I think AEW's pay-per-views, every one, I catch myself saying that's the best pay-per-view they've ever had. And I don't say that, and it's not because I don't like WWE in general, but like I said, I don't watch it. But every time I end up watching it to try it, or because I got nothing going on, I just go, like, it doesn't do it for me. And that's me. Cool.
Well, and I think for me, AEW is best, to your point from a minute ago, it's best when they have an end game they've got to get to. So, like, Tony Khan, I think, is a genius. And I'm not saying that to kiss up to him, whatever. I think he's truly a wrestling genius. But he needs, like all people in life, he needs an editor. Everybody needs an editor or a guide or someone to say, here's my 28 amazing ideas. And someone goes, let's focus on these 14. And that is when they are locked in and focused, AEW is at their best. And oftentimes it's driven by the talent, right? So, like, again, Max is a great storyteller. Punk was a great storyteller. The original Elite story, like the whole Elite and Hangman for 2 years leading to Hangman beating Kenny, was phenomenal. Like, truly some of the best storytelling we've ever seen in wrestling. I think sometimes he throws a lot of stuff in just because, like, this will be a really cool match next week. So I think if you were able to nail Tony Khan down and make him sit through a creative planning meeting for 3 hours once a week instead of coming up with matches at 2 a.m. when lightning hits him, then I think you'd have a much more focused product. But again, I do like the flavor.
Beautiful. Done.